2 months after my daughter quietly drained my accounts and booked me a temporary room at a nursing home without asking, I walked into her living room flanked by a stranger with my eyes, my secret son, and told her the house she wanted would never be hers. She stared as if I had risen from a grave, and for once I let silence do the work, because nothing cut as clean as the sentence I said next, "Meet your secret brother." Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. I am 72 years old. I am a widower, a grandfather, a man who knows how to sharpen a chisel by feel in the dark. I believed I knew the topography of love. You pour yourself into your children and the vessel never leaks. That belief held even after my wife, May, died 3 winters ago and the house learned how to echo. The nights were the worst, especially the ones where the wind turned the sycamore into a hand scraping the window. I would put the kettle on and stand there holding a mug I did not want, listening for the sound of a life that was gone. Then my daughter, Claire, started coming by. She brought Tupperware and bright lists and a voice that skimmed across the surface of grief like a stone. For a while I held on to her visits the way a man who cannot swim holds on to a dock rope. I told myself that this was family, that this was how a father ages. You allow your children to carry the things that are heavy, and you say thank you even when the lift does not feel right. It began the way rot begins, at the edges, where a man who is not looking fails to notice. "Let me take the spare keys, Dad," Claire said, that first week. "Safety. If you lock yourself out, I can swing by. Those old tools. I can post them," Todd added, already holding my garage door remote as if his thumb had always belonged there. "People pay good money for vintage. Decluttering is good for the mind." I remember the way the garage smelled that day, oil and pine shavings, the ghosts of 100 small repairs. Every tool had a place, a shadow on a pegboard drawn by my hand. When I came out the next morning there were empty hooks where wrenches used to hang. The absence looked like a mouth that had forgotten how to close. I noticed when the lawn tractor was not there. I noticed because the grass had grown shaggy along the fence and my hands ached for the familiar vibration in the wheel. Todd said, "I moved it to a safer spot," and smiled like a man who expects you to thank him for stealing your chair and offering you a stool. I noticed when my coin collection was not there. It had been my father's before it was mine, a cedar box with a brass latch and a note inside in his precise hand, "For Walter, who knows the value of things." I had polished the coins once a year. I had told Claire the stories, the Liberty head I got on my 10th birthday, the Mercury dime my father kept in his wallet through the war. "Why do you keep these?" she asked once when she was 12. "They are not for spending. They are for remembering," I said. Sometimes the purpose of a thing is not the obvious one. The day the bank sent a cheerful email welcoming new joint account holder, C. Gavas, I felt the floor tilt under my feet. I read the subject line 3 times, then the body of the message twice, then I printed it out and held the paper because screens make lies look neat. There was a fresh signature on an authorization form I did not remember signing. The bank representative on the phone talked to me as if I were a man who had lost his place in the book. "It is a convenience arrangement," she said. "For your daughter to assist you. It is very common." I drove to Claire's house with the printout in my pocket and a pressure behind my eyes that made the road look like a tunnel. Her living room smelled like lemon cleaner and something new upholstered. Todd was on the patio talking about modernization, while Claire stood at the sink unpeeling labels from mason jars. "Dad," she said, when she saw me. "You should have called. I was about to bring you the soup." "What soup?" I asked, though I knew the soup. I could taste the carrots and the pepper that she always used a little too generously. The question was not for the soup. It was for the thing inside my ribs that had started to feel like a kicked animal. Todd came in, and I saw, with the clarity of a scaled fish on a cutting board, how pleased he was to bring me a brochure. "We found a place," he said, spreading the glossy pages on the table between the mason jars. 5 minutes from us. Community activities. Supervised medication. On-site clinic. I will take you for a tour tomorrow. Noon. Tour of what? I asked because the words that wanted to come out were not words that would have helped. Assisted living, he said, saying the words as if they were a new ride I should try. You have to think long-term. We all do. Claire was gentle. She pressed a hand to my forearm. I felt my muscles jump. You left the stove on last week, she said. I turned it off, I replied. That is not the point, Todd said, and the brochures flapped a little as he tapped them with his finger. This is about safety. The next morning, I put May's teacup on the table and sat in front of it like a man in front of a small shrine. I did not touch it because there are things you do not use anymore, and that is the point. The clock ticked. The furnace breathed. I dialed numbers I knew by heart and asked men who had known me long before anyone thought I needed a brochure to live. We met at the VFW hall. The place has a smell you cannot mistake, floor polish, old brass, sweat baked into wood. The coffee is bad in a way that feels faithful. Ralph, who owns the hands that could strip a bolt with fingertips, gripped my shoulder and searched my face. You look thin, Walt, he said. What did your fish do to you? So I told them. I did not embellish. I laid the facts on the table like tools. The keys gone. The tractor gone. The coin box gone. The email. The tone of voices that now filtered every kindness through a calculation. Is this normal? I asked, finally. Is this what getting old means? You do your work, you pay your debts, and at the end your life gets sorted into jars by someone who does not understand their labels. Men who knew me when I had a full head of hair and a hoarse voice from cheering at Little League when quiet. They looked at their coffee cups because sometimes men need the cover of that paper rim to say something that matters. Harold, who has always been a careful man to the point people think he is shy, cleared his throat. You remember Nora, he said, not looking up. From college. Beat all of us at chess, had that laugh that rolled in like a warm front. Memory unfurled in my chest like a map. Nora on the library steps, her hair pinned up with 2 pencils. Nora beating me in 3 games and kissing the side of my neck after the 4th. Nora listening when I said, at 19, that I wanted a house that had windows you could open with one hand and the smell of yeast bread on Sundays. I remember, I said, keeping my voice steady. She came to our 50th reunion, Harold said. I went because Linda wanted me to be less of a hermit. Nora asked about you. Said she sent you a letter in 1973 and never heard back. Said she did not want to blow up your life when she heard you got married. She had a boy, Walt. The room tilted again, and this time it was not because I was standing on unconcerned ice. It was because the past had jumped time and landed on my table. She had a boy. I repeated, and the word boy felt like a door that had been hidden behind a bookcase all these years. Harold slid a napkin across the table. On it was a set of scrawled lines, a last name I recognized as a common one, a city, Portland, and a street. I kept it, he said. I did not know if it was my place. But it felt wrong to throw it away. I drove north with a thermos of coffee that tasted like the VFW floor and a photo of myself at 21 tucked in the glove compartment. I rehearsed what I would say if a man opened the door and had my eyes. I rehearsed how I would walk away if he told me to go. It felt like walking into a courtroom where I did not know the charges. The house was a narrow one painted a blue that made the white trim pop. There were chalk drawings on the driveway and a bicycle with a basket leaned against the porch. When the door opened, the man standing there had paint on his forearm and little splatters on his jeans. He had my father's jawline and my mother's guarded eyes. "Jacob?" I asked, though I knew. "Yes," he said, with polite caution. "My name is Walter," I said. "I dated your mother in college." This will sound abrupt. "May I show you something?" I held out the photo. I watched his face change, flicker by flicker, as if someone was adjusting the light in the room by hand. "Come in," he said softly. He led me through a narrow hallway and into a kitchen that had lived in. There were crayon marks on the table and a science project drying on a piece of cardboard. A woman turned from the stove. She had kind eyes and the sort of steadiness you recognize because it looks like a dock at low tide, there even when the water drops away. "This is my wife, Anna," Jacob said. "This is Walter." "Hello," she said, and her eyes did not narrow or widen, they simply met mine and held there. "Would you like tea?" "I would," I said, because something in the way steam rises from a cup can anchor a person. We sat. Jacob tucked the photo into his palm and stared at it like a man who does not want to blink. He told me about Nora. He told me she had died last spring. He told me about growing up with a mother who worked 2 jobs and could still beat you at chess when you thought she was too tired to sit at the board. He told me about asking, at 12, why there was a father-shaped hole in the house. He told me what Nora said. She told me, "You do have a father," Jacob said. "But he is not mine to take." She said she had written a letter when she found out she was pregnant because she believed a person deserves the truth, but by the time she was sure she wanted to send it, you had married someone else. She said she wrote again just after I was born but never found your address. She told me that some truths arrive at the wrong time. I thought of 1973 with a sudden sharpness. May and I had married in a church with wood that smelled like lemon and beeswax. We had danced to a song my cousin played badly on a guitar. We had packed a car with hand-me-down pots and an iron skillet. If there had been a letter for me that year, it had never found that address. I felt a knot of something like grief and guilt twist under my ribs, and I rubbed at it without thinking. It did not move. "I am sorry," I said. "I am sorry for what I did not know, and I am sorry for what followed because I did not know it." Jacob nodded, and there was already a resemblance in the way his mouth went to one side when he thought. "I tried to find you when I turned 30, he said. "I asked the alumni office to forward a letter if they could. They sent a polite note about privacy. Then life did its thing and rolled over us for a decade with work and bills and a child who did not sleep through the night. Then another child. Then time. In the next room, a small voice said, 'Is it done, Papa?' Another voice, a little older, said, 'I think so, but the glue is still damp.' 2 children entered with the solemnity of a procession, a boy holding a model rocket, careful as a man carrying a newborn, and a girl with hair that had decided to be wild that day. The boy looked at me with curiosity. The girl regarded me like a cat behind a curtain. 'This is Mr. Walter,' Jacob said, and he had not decided yet whether to say more. 'Hello,' I said. 'That rocket is the tall kind.' 'It is a medium,' the boy said, straightening a little. 'It uses AB engine. We can go to the park after lunch if the wind is not rude.' 'The wind is polite today,' Anna said with a half-smile, and it was ordinary and perfect, that sentence, and it steadied me more than the tea. We ate chicken and rice from bowls that did not match. We did not try to name what we were in that moment. We used smaller words. I asked about school. The boy, whose name was Luca, asked if Nebraska was the one with the tornadoes. The girl, Maya, asked if all grandfathers had mustaches, and I said no, and she said maybe they should. After the plates were stacked, Anna placed her hand over mine, palm warm. It was a gesture from a person who had decided who I was more quickly than I had. "Stay for supper," she said. "Then we will make a plan." I slept that first night in their small guest room with a quilt that had blocks that did not quite line up. I stared at the ceiling and thought of Nora at the chessboard, moving her bishop as if she were blessing each square. I thought of May attempting to teach me to waltz in our kitchen with socks on and the radio low. I thought of Claire as a child in red rain boots that squeaked. I thought of Todd holding a brochure like a menu for my future. In the morning, we made the plan. It started with proof. I saw a physician whose office had a mural of a waterfall painted by someone who honored water with the wrong shade of blue. The doctor was kind and brisk in a way that made me feel that strength was ordinary. We did memory tests. We did orientation. We did that exercise where you draw a clock and place the hands at 11:10. I drew the clock, and I made the hands long and short as a matter of pride, because my father had taught me that the details tell on you. "You are decisional," the doctor said, printing the words on letterhead. "You are fully competent to manage your affairs. If anyone tells you otherwise, show them this." I did not realize how much I had needed to hear that until the paper was in my hands and I felt taller. Next, we went to an attorney. Her office smelled like ink and resolve. There were diplomas in frames that did not announce themselves. She did not talk down to me. She asked for the facts as if they were stones, and she built a wall with them. "First, we revoke any prior powers of attorney if they exist," she said. "Second, we remove your daughter from your accounts and we make sure the bank recognizes you as the sole authority. Third, we create a living trust. You are the trustee while you are alive. You choose a professional successor trustee for when you are gone. The trust holds the house and any significant assets we do not need to keep liquid. It locks the doors that are too easy for opportunists to open." "Like a wrench you cannot turn with your fingers," I said. "Exactly," she replied. We drafted. The keys on her keyboard clicked like a small animal moving through dry leaves. When she slid the documents across to me, I read every word. I am not a man who signs what he has not read. I moved my finger along the lines as if the words were grooves I needed to feel. "What about what they took?" I asked finally, because anger is patient but it keeps an appointment. "We file police reports," she said. "We collect proof. Photographs. Serial numbers. Listings if they are foolish enough to post your property for sale. We keep our heads. Rage does not do paperwork, and paperwork is what wins this kind of fight. Rage does not do paperwork." Those words felt like a steering wheel in my hands. Back at my house, I pulled the old folders from the hall closet. I found receipts. I found the manual for the lawn tractor with the serial number scrawled on the inside cover. I had a photograph of the dent on the right side of the hood from the time I misjudged the angle by the maple. I printed the photo and circled the dent. I measured the tools against the memory of their weight in my palm, and where memory failed I let common sense take over. The old Stanley No. 4 plane has a cut on the handle because my father did not believe in sanding away a lesson. Jacob helped me create a list, because grief had left my edges ragged and he had learned to manage his own edges with care. He called the police department and asked 3 questions I would not have thought to ask. He spoke to the desk sergeant with the tone of a man who has done this before for someone else, and I wondered who, and I decided that if it mattered he would tell me. When we found the listing for the lawn tractor on an online marketplace, the photos were unmistakable. The dent. The scar on the seat courtesy of the dog we used to have that could not resist a chew. The description said, lightly used, one owner. The price was cash only. The seller's name was a screen name that made a bad joke out of an old movie title. The pickup location was the next town over. Print it, Jacob said, and we did. We took the stack of papers to the police station. The officer behind the desk listened, and he did not look away when I said, "My son-in-law may have posted this." He typed. He asked for my identification. He asked for my relationship to the items. He took the papers as if they were as valuable as the objects they described. "We will assign a detective," he said. "Do not contact the seller yourself. If this is your property, we will do the recovery the right way." In the afternoon, we went to the bank. The manager was a woman who wore her hair like a flag pulled back tight. She recognized me from long ago and she greeted me with a kindness that made my throat go tight without warning. "We need to remove someone from a joint arrangement," I said. "We need to make sure all access is through me alone." "There is a process," she said. "It is straightforward. We filled out papers. We changed passwords. We set up alerts that would sing out if someone tried to do what they should not." The manager looked me in the eye when we were done and said, "I am glad you came in yourself, Mr. Voss." When we returned to my house, Jacob walked through the rooms without comment, hands in the pockets of his jacket. His gaze paused on the wedding photo of me and May. We were young enough to believe the future was a map we could draw. "She looks kind," he said. "She was," I replied, and I felt again the ache of her absence like a missing tooth your tongue cannot stop finding. "Did she know about me?" he asked, and there was no way to avoid the question, no way to save us from the small hurt inside it. "No," I said. "She did not. If I had known, I would have told her. She did not like secrets, not even little ones about whether you ate the last cookie." He nodded, and I saw the thought cross his mind like a shadow, what would she have done, if she had known? I imagined her setting an extra plate at the table before I had finished saying the sentence. I imagined her teaching Jacob how to knead dough. I imagined her finding his strengths and polishing them the way she polished every scuffed surface that mattered. We installed an automatic stove shutoff that afternoon. Jacob crawled behind the oven, and I held the flashlight, and we worked in the old rhythm of two people who know how to mend what is worth keeping. When it clicked down the first time, a small metal sound, I felt a guilt I had not admitted ease. I could tell Claire, if she ever asked again, that this one worry had a wire and a fail-safe. It did not make her behavior right. It made me feel that I had been fair to the facts. The next day at noon, a van pulled into my driveway. Todd stepped out with the confidence of a man returning to a worksite he thinks he owns. He did not knock, he walked in, because he had a key, and I made a mental note to change the locks that afternoon. "Let us go, Walt," he said, patting my shoulder as if I were a tired dog who needed encouraging. "The facility is expecting you." I booked the larger room. "The larger room," I repeated, and I thought of a fox in a henhouse, proud of his bite. He held out his hand for a suitcase I had not packed. I handed him an envelope instead. He took it with a puzzled look. He slid a sheet from it. He read the heading. I watched the skin around his mouth flatten. "What is this?" he asked. "Paper," I said. "It cuts." He read. He called Claire, his voice high and tight. I heard her through the phone. The words tumbled out of her in a rush toward control. "Dad, what are you doing?" she asked when she arrived, cheeks pink, hair pulled back so hard it made my scalp ache in sympathy. "We have a plan." "You have a plan," I said. "It does not include me." "Do not make this ugly," Todd said, and he did something he had done before that I had tolerated. He put a hand on my arm as if it belonged there. "You already did," I said, and I moved my arm because I am not furniture. "Dad, the stove," Claire said, and I could see that memory had become a lever she reached for without thinking. "I installed an automatic shut-off," I said. "And I eat dinner at a table now where other hands rest. You can worry if you would like. You cannot move me like a piece on a board you think you own." The front door opened, and Jacob walked in with his 2 children. He carried a folder because we had planned this far. Luca held the model rocket like a flag. Maya had her strawberry magnet in her pocket because she wanted to show me that not all important things are paper. Claire looked at Jacob and then at me. Her eyes widened and widened again as a dozen pieces of information tried to climb into one small room. "Who is this?" she said, and her voice sounded like it had to push through something thick to arrive. "This is Jacob," I said. "He is my son." Todd laughed. It was the wrong sound for the floor we were standing on. "This is absurd," he said. "This is a trick to make us back off. None of this changes our responsibility to ensure your safety, Walt." "It changes everything," I said. "Because responsibility without respect is just control in a nicer shirt." Jacob handed me the folder, and I pulled out the physician's letter, the trust, the police report numbers. I laid them on the table in that order. Claire looked at them as if the documents were snakes, then, slowly, as if they were bridges. "What is the trust?" she asked finally, practical even with a bruise blooming behind her voice. "It is the house," I said. "It is my accounts, those that belong there. It is my promise that if I go to a nursing home, it is because I decided to, not because someone else decided I would like bingo." "Do not be ridiculous," Todd said sharply. "This is manipulation. This is elder abuse by strangers." "These are my decisions," I said. "And he is not a stranger." "Are you going to choose this man over your daughter?" he asked, and the contempt in the word man made my teeth set. "I am choosing myself," I said. "And I am choosing anyone who chooses me as a person and not as a problem to be managed." Maya had slipped her hand into mine. Her palm was small and a little damp the way a small child's hand always is. She looked up at me, eyes steady, and that steadiness gave me something I did not know I had mislaid. "Claire," I said, softer now because love is not a thing I want to mangle. "You could have asked. You could have said you were afraid, and we would have answered that fear with something that was not theft. We could have installed this stove device together. We could have scheduled dinners. We could have set up alerts before the bank had to send me cheer." Her face changed. I watched fear and anger and something that looked like shame pass through. She put down the shopping bag she had been holding as if the handle had started to burn. "What is in your will?" she asked, because when you do not know where to put your hands, you count. "I wrote a new one," I said. "You receive a fixed sum. The remainder goes in directions that make the story of this family true." "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means the people who sat at a table with me and said stay for supper will be in my house long after I cannot open the door," I said. The room took a breath with us. Todd picked up the physician's letter and said, "We will have him evaluated independently," in that clipped tone of a man who mistakes procedure for truth. I had already done the procedure. I had truth in time. If you call the bank, I said, they will tell you what I told them. If you call the police, they will tell you there are report numbers. If you contact the facility, you can tell them not to expect me. It will save them some paperwork. You are selfish, Todd said finally. You are putting your pride ahead of your safety and your family. Pride fixed my sink last winter, I said. Pride kept me upright when my wife died. Pride is not always a sin. Sometimes it is the last tool a man has. Todd left. He did not slam the door, which I would have forgiven more quickly. He left a silence that had heft to it. Claire stayed. She looked at Jacob again, and there was something in her gaze I had not seen in years, curiosity without possession. How old are you? She asked. 51, he said. Do you have children? She asked, though the answer was clinging to my arm and holding a model rocket. Yes, he said. These two. She nodded. So do I, she said. Dad, can I bring Sophie on Thursday after school? She has a math test and I think she would like your kitchen. You can, I said. The door is open for you, if you come without a bag to carry anything away. She flinched. I deserve that, she said. You deserve a lot of things, I said. Not all of them bad. After she left, Jacob and I changed the locks. It felt like a small ceremony. We did not say much. The new keys were cut clean and they bit into my palm with the satisfying bite of a thing that does exactly what it was made to do. In the days that followed, the detective called and recovered the tractor from a garage in the next town. There was a polite conversation on a sidewalk that ended with a man signing a piece of paper that said he had not known the item was stolen. There was an awkward knock on Todd's door, and a polite tone that has no patience for excuses. Items trickled back, like the tide returning what it had considered taking for keeps. The coin box did not come home. I mourned it like a person. The attorney called to tell me the trust was recorded. Her voice had the satisfaction of a line drawn straight. The bank manager called me by my first name and said she was glad to see me in person again. On Tuesdays, I ate dinner at Jacob's house. We moved with a caution that did not feel like fear, it felt like care. Luca and I launched the rocket. We read the instructions together slowly. At the park, the wind was polite. We counted down and everyone cheered when it lifted. It nicked a maple, and we asked the neighbor who owned the lawn if we could step between her pansies to fetch it. She said of course, dear, as if the sight of a grandfather and a boy stalking a model rocket was the kind of spectacle she wished would happen more often. On Sundays, I cooked stew in May's Dutch oven and set a second chair by the window where she used to read the paper aloud and make fun of the way I pretended I did not care about the comics. We lit one candle because light brings out the edges of faces you love. I told the children about their grandmother's quiet humor and the day she decided our front steps needed to be painted a cheerful blue and then did it while I was at the hardware store buying a neutral gray. Maya drew a picture of me with a gray beard and arms long enough to hold 3 people. She stuck it on their refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a strawberry, and later she gave me a second magnet, a smaller one, to take home so that my refrigerator would not feel left out. On Thursdays, Claire brought Sophie. The first time, they arrived with nervous smiles and paper cups from the bakery down the street as if coffee could function as a passport. We sat at my kitchen table. The automatic stove shutoff clicked in a way that reassured everyone without becoming a sermon. Sophie asked if we could feed the birds in the morning before school, and I said we could. I showed her where I keep the seed and how to move slowly so the finches do not spook. She asked if the squirrels ever drop down out of the sycamore like little acrobats, and I said they did, and she said then maybe it is like a circus, and I said it could be if you put the right music on in your head. Claire watched us, her mouth a little soft. She washed the cups after we were done with them, and she put them upside down on the towel to dry, and it was a small thing, that gesture, but there has been a drought between us and small things or weather. We talked about boundaries without saying the word. We talked about bills and the concrete matter of how an older man can keep living in his house without it turning into a trap. We talked about setting up alerts for when the mail arrives and for when I do not answer a call. We did not talk about the coin box. Some losses must not be used as tools in a conversation. I drove past the nursing home one afternoon on purpose. It was suburban nice. The lawns were clipped, the windows clean. A woman in a pink cardigan read a book on a bench. I did not feel hatred. I felt the straightforward knowledge you feel when you pass a town that is not yours. I will live there if I need to, but not because a brochure led me by the elbow. I went home and watered the spider plant that had somehow survived all my neglect, and I told it that some things manage under poor conditions until better weather arrives. I wrote letters. I wrote one to Nora that I will never send. I wrote one to May that I tuck under the gray stone on the mantel when the words feel like they need to sit near something permanent. I wrote one to Claire that I read aloud to myself twice before I put it in the envelope because words can wound and I did not want to wound. I said what I needed to say, that love is not a form you fill out and file. That her fear is not the same as my weakness. That I forgive her for what she did out of panic but not for what she did out of hunger. I wrote my will and I meant every sentence. A college scholarship in Nora's name at the state school because she worked 2 jobs and still beat you at chess. A gift to the VFW to replace that stalwart coffee pot so the new pot might be slightly less faithful to bitterness. The rest of the family who set down forks and made room when I knocked at their door and they did not know if I was a ghost or a storm or a man who needed to sit. I expected people to say I had chosen the new over the old, that I had betrayed the first family for the second. Those claims came, in small ways, on the breath of distant relatives who call at holidays. What I answered is simple: families are not either or. They are and. I have a daughter who did a wrong thing for a reason that was not wholly wrong. I have a son who is a good man because a good woman raised him to be one. I have grandchildren who think the squirrels are acrobats. I have a house that is not a project. This is not a betrayal. This is a correction. One evening, when the late light came in at the angle that makes dust look like confetti, Claire and I sat on the back steps with our elbows on our knees. The dog who belongs to my neighbor leaned against her leg as if love can find its mark even when you do not think you deserve it. I was scared, she said finally, staring at the small rips in her jeans where the thread had given up. After Mom died, I realized how close we are to everything falling apart. You would not eat more than a biscuit. You looked smaller. I would lie awake and think, what if I wake up and he fell and nobody found him? And Todd, she stopped, because there are things you cannot say about your husband to your father without something in the room breaking. He is persuasive, she said instead. He makes plans fast. It felt like action. I am sorry you were afraid, I said. You could have brought that fear to me without taking my keys. I know, she said. I do see that now. Fear is not a crime, I said. But what you did was. We will let the law do what it will do with the tractor and the coins. With us, we will do what families do when they can. We will find the part of the rope that is not frayed. She cried then, because sometimes the truth has to find a way out of your ducts. I looked out at the yard and gave her my presence like a shield. When she was done, she wiped her face with the heel of her hand like she had when she was 6 and had not yet learned about tissues. Does it feel strange, she asked, to have a son who is older than I am? She tried to laugh, but the sound got caught in the hedge. It feels like finding a photograph in the pocket of a coat you thought you had donated, I said. It feels like the past has a present tense. She nodded. We watched a squirrel launch itself from the sycamore with a confidence I envied. There were setbacks. There always are. Todd sent me a letter through a lawyer that suggested my decisions were the result of undue influence. The letter used words like vulnerable adult and suggested that I had been tricked. My attorney responded with the physician's letter, the dates on the police reports, and a sentence of her own that I loved for its precision. Your client mistakes a man changing his mind for a man losing it. At the grocery store, an acquaintance raised her eyebrows and said loudly, I heard you found a new family, and it landed like an accusation wrapped in gift paper. I said, equally loudly, I did not find them. I knocked on their door. Then I picked up my apples and my flour and went home and baked bread that did not rise properly, and Maya ate it anyway and said it was perfect for toasting. The detective called to say that charges might be filed. He spoke with the careful tone of a man trying to do an unglamorous job well. He asked me if I wanted to press for restitution. I told him I did. I told him it was not about money. I told him the coin box had been a promise, and people who break promises should be asked to pay attention. On an afternoon when the sky had the color of dishwater, Jacob and I sat at the chessboard on my dining room table. He moved his knight in a way I did not see coming. I laughed, short and surprised, the way you do when a calf butts you and you pretend it hurt more than it did. Your mother used to do that, I said. She would hold her bishop like it was already celebrating the move it was going to make. Do you miss her? He asked, meaning Nora, and I understood also that he was asking whether it was allowed for him to miss her in front of me. I missed the possibility of her, I said. I missed the version of me she knew that I do not get to be again. But I love your mother for making you without me and making you well. Does that answer your question the way you intended to ask it? It does, he said, and he took my rook. Later that week, Luca and I fixed the hinge on the pantry door. I showed him how to seat a screw so it does not strip its own chance at staying. I handed him the screwdriver and I watched him resist the urge to overdo it. There is a point in tightening where enough is the honest answer. There is a point where you recognize that pressing harder will not make the thing hold, it will only crack the wood. At night, after the house has gone quiet, I stand sometimes at the kitchen sink and talk to May. I tell her about Jacob's careful hands. I tell her about Claire's Thursday calls. I tell her about Sophie counting the seeds in her palm and then losing count and starting over because honesty is a thing she learned early. I do not ask May if I am doing this correctly because she would laugh at that in the gentle way she used to and say, Walter, there is no correct. There is only the next right thing you can see to do. A month after that first confrontation, Claire stood on my porch holding a cardboard box. Inside were photographs, loose and free of albums, like leaves. Some were of us, May in a bathing suit that proved she had once been very brave, me with a mustache too committed to a joke, Claire with a missing tooth grinning at an ice cream cone. Some were not, a man in a uniform I did not recognize, a farm I did not remember. At the bottom of the box was the cedar lid from the coin box. Not the box. Just the lid, with my father's note still taped inside, his handwriting steady as a fence. I found it in Todd's workshop, she said. He said he was going to make something out of it. The anger rose up, hot and hard, and I had to sit down because standing with that anger felt like standing on ice again. I held the lid. I slid my finger along the brass latch. I could smell my father for a moment, the sawdust and the cigarettes he had given up and still smelled like. Thank you, I said, because the present tense matters. She nodded, and she looked small on my porch. I am sorry, she said, and then, more specific, the way a person reaches for a screw that fits the hole, I am sorry I treated you like a problem. I am sorry I did not see that your grief is not the same as weakness. I am sorry I let someone else tell me who you were. Apology accepted, I said. Trust is rebuilt with nails, not glue. It will take time. I can do time, she said. I placed the cedar lid on the mantel. I do not know yet what it will cover again. Maybe nothing. Maybe the lid will be the box. It can be a symbol, a shrine, a reminder that we keep what we can and we mark the place where the rest should be. In June, Maya lost her first tooth. She insisted that the tooth fairy could not work without proper paperwork, so she made a small certificate that said one tooth relinquished and folded it under her pillow like a contract. In July, Luca and I built a birdhouse with an entrance sized for wrens because everyone deserves a space that fits. In August, Claire brought 3 tomatoes from her garden and we sliced them thick and sprinkled salt and ate them with our hands over the sink, and it was so ordinary it felt like a prayer I had been trying to remember the words to. When you are old, people think the plot points of your life are behind you. They think the climax happened already and what remains are epilogues. I am here to tell you that is not true. I have just written a chapter where a man learns that love needs a ledger when the world tries to take what does not belong to it, and a letter when hearts need a sentence to hold on to. I have learned that revenge for people like me does not look like slamming a door. It looks like a stack of papers with the right signatures. It looks like a police report number written on a sticky note by the phone. It looks like walking into a room with your son and saying to your daughter, we can keep what is worth keeping if we are willing to set down what is not.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.